So this lesson plan was one developed for the Life Sciences Grade 11 learners, and we used the theme of ecological footprinting to cover the topic of human impact. Under this topic of human impact, they are expected to look at human impact on the environment, current crises for human survival, and problems to be solved within the next generation. The African Ecological Footprint game has a number of different cards, and these can be used in different ways and in different combinations, but let me take you through them in the way that I have used them. So for example, one can start with looking at the Facilitators Notes. The Facilitators Notes cover the different aspects of one's footprint: energy, materials and waste, food, living space, travel, water and biodiversity. And these notes have interesting facts and figures around these different elements of one's footprint. For example, if you are wanting to change your energy footprint in Africa, it's a very different story if you live in Mozambique, where they have hydroelectric electricity, compared to if you live in South Africa, where they have coal-powered electricity. Switching off a light or changing a light bulb or deciding to install a fancy new stove have different implications depending on the particular energy supply that your country has. So these kinds of things are the things that are covered in the Facilitators Notes, really understanding the structures and mechanisms that underpin the kinds of choices that you make and that might influence the effects of what you do. So then there are also a series of question cards in this game, and here you are asked to give information about energy, what kind of appliances you use, how much waste you produce, how much waste you recycle, how many people live in your house. All of these kinds of things give you a particular score from which you're then able to calculate your individual footprint. And then you compare your footprint with other people and with other countries, and then you think about, well, maybe I want to change my footprint, maybe I want to cut my footprint down. And then you're given a number of different options, both individual actions and systemic actions for changing your footprint. So individual actions are things that you can do fairly easy yourself, but systemic actions are much more complicated, and they may take, for example, lobbying with government or starting some big NGO project in order to change the things that underpin what influences your footprint. Then there are a series of think about cards that you can also use in this game, and these cards start to raise ethical dilemmas, and they bring in various values and morals that make you think a little bit differently about development and make you think a little bit differently about your footprint. So for example, one of the cards says, considering the poor socioeconomic conditions under which many Africans live, should the size of our footprint be our right or our responsibility? So often a footprint is all about the big impact that you have on the environment, and it's all about cutting down. But we have to acknowledge that there are people in the world whose footprint is very low and who actually need to increase their footprint in order to increase their standard of living. So these kinds of complexities and dilemmas are raised through these think about cards. Then finally, there are a series of worksheets, and this is the most important one in the African Ecological Footprint game, where the learners then have to make some kinds of decisions about action, realistic action plans that they would like to make in order to change their footprint. You'll see the two columns on the right. One is about lifestyle changes I can make to bring my footprint down, and actions to address systemic issues. And then they are asked to write what they think they can realistically do, and then prioritize those from 1 to 6, as from 1 the most important, 6 the least important. You'll notice that you don't necessarily have to fill in each space in each column, because we are talking about being realistic. So if you take a look at this game as a whole, I hope you'll be able to see that there is a dialectical logic embedded in the game. Looking at the first aspect of the dialectic, creating knowledge of what is and what is not. The Facilitators Notes give you a good understanding of what is from a structural perspective, the things that underpin the choices that you make regarding your footprint. The question cards are a little bit more personal, and they tell you they help you to measure your footprint, so they tell you what your footprint is, but it also indicates where you are perhaps not using the things that you need in order to contribute to your well-being. So this game gives us that first part of the dialectic, helps to give us new ways of seeing our being. The game also helps create knowledge of what could be, because we look at the action option cards, we look at new ways of becoming, that is, new ways that we could be personally, but also new ways that our society or the structures of our society could be influenced through our lobbying work. Thirdly, the game helps us to create knowledge of what should be by bringing in values and principles and helping to create discussion around very difficult things to do with development and our footprint, and new ways of relating with each other, new ways of relating with the world in which we live. Finally, the game helps us to create knowledge of what can be. So the game gives us this particular worksheet that we can use, where we can make decisions about realistic changes that we can make in our lives. So to sum up, transformative learning is about change, and the new ways of seeing our being, the new ways of becoming, the new ways of relating, and the new ways of doing offered to us by the dialectic are perhaps a very useful way of guiding transformative learning in our classrooms.